Good morning. Welcome to this meeting of the Licensing and Regulatory Committee. Apologies for slight lateness of running. My name is Councillor Ollie Walters. I'm Chair of the Licensing and Regulatory Committee and I'll be chairing the meeting today. May I first remind you of some domestic arrangements. You will be invited to speak and ask questions by myself. Please do not interrupt other speakers. Please ensure that all microphones are turned off when not in use. Please ensure mobile phones are on silent or switched off. We will be using e-voting for this meeting. Please could all members therefore ensure they're logged in and ready to use the app. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. If the fire alarm sounds, leave the building immediately via the fire exit and make your way to the assembly point, Ipswich Town Football Ground. Do not enter the atrium, ground floor area and walkways. If you are in the atrium at the time of the alarm, follow the signs to the nearest fire exit. Use the stairs, please don't use the lifts, and do not re-enter the building until we're told it's safe to do so. Thank you. So, can I ask the officers attending the meeting to introduce themselves today, please?
Nigel DeLone, the legal officer.
Kate Pearsall, Licensing Team Leader.
Chloe Sanders, Licensing Officer.
Karen Sayer, Governance Officer.
Thank you. So, can I now move to the agenda, please? Do we have any apologies for absence?
Apologies received from Councillor Terence Carter, Councillor Lorraine Baker, Councillor David Bradbury, Councillor Gilly Morgan and Councillor Anders Linder.
Thank you. Can I ask members, are there any declarations of interests? No? Great. So item 3 on the agenda to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of April 2024. Are there any points regarding the accuracy of the minutes? No? Could I have a proposer for that, please? Councillor Overett, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Pratt, thank you. The lead officer for Regulatory and Civil Office will now conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, the vote for this item is now in progress.
Sorry to be a pain, but I can't find the table of papers on one of my phone.
You can't find the agenda.
No, it's not appearing on.
I'm not
Do you
eligible
want
to
to give
vote.
me your vote verbally?
Yes, in favour.
It says I'm not eligible to vote.
Okay, have you logged in?
Yeah?
Shall I take your vote verbally?
Well, yes, I approve.
That's 4 votes for, Chair. That's carried.
Thank you. So the minutes have been confirmed and will be signed at the end of the meeting. Item 4, to receive notification of petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme.
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Have there been any questions from councillors?
None received.
Thank you. So item 6, which is to approve MLR/24/2, the revised Hackney Carriage and private hire licensing policy. I will now invite the licensing team leader, Kate Pearsall, to introduce paper MLR/24/2 to the committee.
Thank you, Chair. On the 12th of April 2024, we presented the draft Hackney Carriage and private hire policy to this committee to be approved for a 6-week consultation period. The team has worked hard to ensure that the policy reflects the current legislation and guidance and ensures that we deliver our commitment to the primary and overriding consideration of public safety. We have worked closely with the trade to discuss our proposals and have taken on board their comments and suggestions. Throughout the process, we have aimed to balance the needs of the licence holder with our duty to protect the public and in particular children and vulnerable adults. During the consultation, which began on the 23rd of April and ended on the 4th of June, of the 162 drivers and 22 operators licensed with the Mid Suffolk District Council, We received feedback from one driver. We also received comments from the Disability Forum for Suffolk, Sproughton Parish Council and Suffolk Constabulary. All comments are attached to Appendix C. Officers reviewed all feedback and have commented on all the points raised, which are outlined in Appendix D. To confirm, there were no specific objections to the proposed policy received from the Mid-Suffolk trade. The two items that have been highlighted in the report for determination today were raised by members of the trade from the Baber District Council. Item 1 is in relation to the frequency of testing of vehicles after 5 years of age, and item 2 is in relation to the level of tint on the rear windows of the vehicle. For both items, Baber District Council adopted officer recommendations as outlined in the report. And for consistency of approach, as well as recognising that the Mid-Suffolk trade did not object to these items, we would request that officer recommendations are also adopted at this committee. All other aspects of the policy are considered accepted. Following your determination of these two items, we recommend that you approve the policy to proceed to Cabinet for adoption. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And thank you for all the time and work that you've put into creating the new policy. I know it's been a long and tiresome project at times. So can I ask if we have any questions for the officer? Councillor Stringer?
Thank you. A couple of questions. One slightly random one. Have we heard of anything from the new incoming government about any changes that might take place in licensing? Because obviously we've heard a lot of potential planning changes and stuff. Just wondered if we'd heard of any potential changes. Also, this policy, does this one mirror the policy in Baber? Is it almost identical or changes or what have you? And the third question, I'll get all three questions out. It mentions there's quite a lot of stuff on limousines and stuff. Is often limousines also supply alcohol? Is that supply of alcohol covered by other licensing, or should it be in this policy?
Thank you, Councillor Stringer. I can answer the second question, which is yes, it is the same policy for both councils, Baber and Mid-Suffolk. And I can reiterate that Baber has approved, even though the two objections or questions from Worth and Baber operators, they have approved it as it sits in front of us now. If I can hand over to you, Kate, for the other 2 questions.
Thank you, Chair. We've had no update yet from government regarding any changes in relation to taxis. We'll of course keep an eye out. We get regular updates coming through. In terms of limousines and alcohol, that would be covered under the Licensing Act, enforcement through that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Can I just make one point on
Yes.
We only have one licensed limousine in Mid-Suffolk, and as far as I'm aware, they do not provide alcohol, but you can take your own.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Overett.
Yeah, I appreciate that we've not heard from our Mid-Suffolk taxi companies. So I just wondered if we have any overview of how many taxi drivers do leave the profession because of lack of sufficient financial reward, and whether that's something that in any way we should be proactively advocating for their interests, or always checking that we've got the balance right on that matter.
Thank you, Councillor Overett. Yes, obviously we are aware of recruitment issues. That's not an issue that we are here to discuss today, but we are very welcome to have meetings outside this committee or indeed at the next committee. But obviously it is an issue, and we are, I don't know if the officers want to add anything to that.
Yes, and this is why we try to engage as much as possible with the trade with this policy, particularly in terms of the levels for the vehicles and looking at emissions and so on, and trying to work with them to make sure we're not putting in too many barriers for them to operate, but also maintaining a level of safety for themselves, the drivers, and also the public. We have had an influx of applications lately for drivers, so we are seeing an increase in applicants, but we are also working with them to make sure we're supporting them in their business and also running it safely. Thank you.
And it is possibly worth noting as well that we are looking to very soon update the application process to an online process, which is bound to have a few teething problems, but should make the whole process much easier and quicker, both for applicants and for officers to actually process. So hopefully that will see an increase in numbers. Any other questions? Councillor Pratt.
Have we looked into the kind of additional financial pressures that a biannual MOT test might place upon drivers? And secondly, I noted that there was only one respondent from Mid-Suffolk, and you said that there was no objection from the trade body. Was that because there was no response from the trade body, or they had written that or do they actually agree with? Are they actually in agreement with it?
Pass it over to you.
We have received emails from members of the trade that said they are happy with the proposed policy and are keen to get it through. As I say, we are trying to work with them. For example, the objection or the comments that came in that you reference, we are working closely to try and overcome some of the issues that they have. It's just getting the balance of ensuring public safety, which is paramount, but also making sure that we do have a trade there to offer those journeys. So we are working closely.
Councillor Overett.
Just to note that I would welcome us as a committee having that discussion at some point.
Any other questions to the officers? No? Okay. So I will now open the item up for debate. I would like to mention that Councillor Wiltshire, who is unfortunately not with us at this time, if she were to turn up now, she won't be able to take part in the debate or the vote. So, but that doesn't stop us debating. So, who would like to go first, if indeed anyone? Councillor Stringer.
Thank you. Thank the officers for a very easy to read set of policies. It's probably why we haven't had lots of influx of people coming back to us arguing or trying to change it. Seems like a very pragmatic policy in the area that we're in at the moment, where we do need to encourage taxi drivers at the moment, and since it also mirrors precisely the one in our co-authority, it seems to cover absolutely everything that we need to cover. I'm happy to vote for it, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Stringer. Would anyone else like to contribute?
I will if I can. Yeah, I think that we want to encourage people to use sort of like a mixed modes of transport methods, and taxis are obviously a really vital part of that mix. I do sometimes wonder, reading the one correspondent, the person who did respond, whether cumulatively what we are doing is just applying more and more pressure on this industry rather than helping them to thrive and flourish. I absolutely understand that, safety is paramount. Of course it is, and that's probably why I will be voting for this. However, I do so with slightly gritted teeth, to be quite frank, because I feel that this is another cost pressure. We still don't know what that extra cost is going to be for those drivers. We're also just really encouraging taxi drivers and private hire cabbies to be just constantly getting finance and purchasing new cars, which is not really good for the environment. I strongly believe that we should make older vehicles go as far as they can. But it's also you know, having to get renewed financing all the time is probably an extra cost pressure on the taxi company. Yeah, I mean, I've got other things that I would like to say regarding the other parts of the policy in the appendix, but I understand we're really just talking about this, so I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Pratt. Councillor Overett.
Yeah, I completely agree with the gritted teeth that Councillor Pratt referred to, although it is an excellent report and it's well written and it's very clear. I completely agree with that sense that it's hard for taxi drivers to make a reasonable living from what we can understand. I'd like to know more about that for sure, but I'm also aware that there is a lack of, you know, taxi services for people with disabilities, and for women having a choice potentially of where they access a taxi from, you know, which company they feel comfortable with and what have you. So it's also about, you know, the best interests of potentially more vulnerable groups within society as well, within the community as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Overett. Yeah, I mean, I'm in full agreement with both councillors on those points, and I think that is something that we've got to continue to strive and work towards. You know, certainly the policy does take into account older vehicles, and you know, if the vehicle is still fit for purpose, then it just, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, will just need 2 checks a year as opposed to 1. But obviously there will be a cost to that. But unless yeah, carry on.
If I could just pick up on that point, that's what we've changed in this policy. We did have an age limit, but actually that doesn't help the drivers. It also doesn't help when we're trying to encourage hybrid vehicles and more economical vehicles, because you might have an older vehicle that's hybrid, but it doesn't meet the age. So we've actually taken the age policy out, so that gives drivers more options to get older vehicles, as you suggest. But then, as a compromise as such, we've introduced just an extra test, which is it is a £50 extra for that test, but it just ensures the safety of the vehicle. So we have, again, we've got another taxi forum next week, so we are trying, we're getting a very good working relationship with the trade, and councillors are welcome to come as well, and we're more than happy to have meetings with yourselves just to give you regular updates of what we are doing to encourage the trade and get more vehicles out there and so on. So yeah, it's getting the balance, which I think we are achieving now.
Thank you. Can I ask that you share those forum dates with the committee? Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm certainly going to be going along to one of them. It's good. Being in Stowmarket, it's easier for me to engage directly with taxi drivers, which I do frequently. So both, you know, from a council perspective and from a user's perspective. So, but I totally agree that, you know, we need to be thinking from both sides to make sure that we've got enough taxis, and the taxi drivers that we've got, we're looking after, and we're not expecting financially too much from them. Anything? Yeah, of course.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's really good to hear that, you know, there are forums that we can attend to better understand issues for taxi drivers. It did make me think, like, you know, reading that we only had one correspondent. I know that a couple of other consultees did respond. What is our relationship like with the taxi drivers themselves? Is it positive?
Thank you, Councillor. The relationship that I've experienced with taxi drivers is very positive. And again, we do have these open forums. Part of the consultation, there were meetings at the John Peel Centre where we invited the trade and drivers to come along. I unfortunately wasn't able to get to the last one of those, but the feedback that I got, both from taxi drivers and from officers, was positive. Yes, of course, there were some conversations, you know, that needed to be, you know, discussed, but on the whole, you know, it wasn't a bear pit or anything like that. You know, and I think that's borne out by the fact that there were no real objections to the new policy. There were just there was the comment, as Councillor Overett brought up, you know, of financial viability. And again, we've covered that, but in terms of the actual policy, I just think that they want us to, as a council, you know, get it agreed so that they can start working under the new policy. Would you like to add anything? Okay, thank you. No, that's fine. Councillor Over it.
Councillor Stringer getting all my questions together at once. Yeah, it was just I can't find my notes, but there's a question about safeguarding and the doubling up of the safeguarding training.
Oh, yes.
I just feel, you know, safeguarding training is safeguarding training, and it would be fantastic if there were those kinds of examples could be looked at as to where we might be able to apply. It might not be a common sense policy, but at least to consider it and show that we have looked, rather than just saying, oh, well, no policy means that we can't actually make the two double up.
Thanks, Councillor. I'll hand over to the officer.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we are reviewing the safeguarding element. It is a statutory requirement, but we are reviewing it because we have taken on board comments from drivers that it's a 2-day course, it is quite lengthy, so that's something we're looking at, and we've looked at also incorporating other elements that they have to carry out all into one day, because feedback has been, can we just come in and do one for the day and go boom, 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 get all the tests done, and then they can get on the road. So we are looking at the safeguarding, which is why we haven't specified exactly who that provider is, so we can make those amendments and changes quite easily.
That's really good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other points for debate? Councillor Stringer.
Just want to follow up, see if I can ungrit some of the teeth. First of all, I didn't thank the staff actually for that one-to-one engagement you've been having with the trade is probably one of the reasons we've had such little feedback, because they didn't need to feedback through, as it were, the official channel, because there is been that ongoing conversation. So thank you for that. Equally, we need to be slightly careful. If you've got an older vehicle, we have to acknowledge that a taxi can do an awful lot of miles. There is a taxi at the moment, because I've been watching it. It's the taxi with the largest amount of miles on its clock. It's done 408,000 miles, I think, in its 6 years. So, if and it's on its first engine as well. I won't give an advert for the company that made it, but anyway, there is one of them in Stonemarket. There is a having an extra MOT for, as it were, for an older vehicle is actually, it's not, yes, it's doubling up the amount they've got to do, but actually it's us being good custodians as well, because that vehicle could be doing 50,000 miles in between those two MOTs. And if it is an older vehicle, those emissions, something could have gone wrong. It could be belching out all sorts of stuff. So it is, I think, a good compromise to have that second MOT for those older vehicles. So while still encouraging people to be in the trade, it's about striking that balance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I agree. I think once the vehicle is on the road and it's working, the carbon budget of that vehicle, we need to try and encourage people to keep it going. As long as it's safe, we need to keep it going as long as we can. And Any other items for debate? Councillor Pratt.
Yeah, just very briefly, another common thread in the correspondence was, there seems to be dissatisfaction with the taxi ranks. In Stowmarket, and I guess the other one is in Sudbury for the Baber consultants. But what are we doing so far? I suppose we're working with highways to try and remediate that. But what are we doing at the moment to try and improve it?
Thank you, Councillor. Again, it's not necessarily an item for debate here, but it's a fair question, and I'd like to take that question away and for us to either have a direct conversation or to have a meeting outside this room to discuss that. But you're absolutely right. You know, Councillor Overett and myself had a conversation yesterday about taxi ranks and being able to catch taxis, etc., safely and conveniently, and you know, we will definitely be looking at improving that. Anything else? No? Great. Okay, so my recommendation then will be that the Licensing and Regulatory Committee approve the policy to proceed to Cabinet for adoption. The lead officer, regulatory and civil officer will now conduct the electronic votes.
You need a second.
I beg your pardon. Who would like to second that? Councillor Stringer, thank you. So if we could now open the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, the vote for this item is now in progress. That's 4 votes for, Chair. That's carried.
Thank you. So that is carried. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you to the officers for the hard work that you've done. We've taken note of these comments and we will take further action on points raised that I've said will be carried outside this meeting. I'll make sure that that happens. Thank you for your time, and I'll now declare this meeting closed at 11 a.m.